It's Build a Big Podcast. I'm David Hooper, and this episode is all about lessons from audiobook work. And when I talk about audiobook work, I'm talking about the very specific book that I am narrating right now, and it's my book. It's called Big Podcast. Grow your podcast audience, build listener loyalty, and get everybody talking about your show. It is 93,000 words, 462 pages, so it's a big one. And one of the reasons that I haven't been putting out episodes of Build a Big Podcast as frequently for the last month or so is because I'm spending a lot of time narrating this book. A lot of people told me when I came out with this book, they said, "Man, that's a big book. Do you have an audiobook version?" And I said, "Yeah, I know it's a big book. And that's why I don't have an audiobook version yet." You're intimidated to read it, so am I. Imagine trying to read it perfectly. Anyway, I am trying to read it perfectly right now, and here are some lessons from this current read. I'm about 2/3 done, actually a little more. I'm probably 3/4 done. All but one chapter I've recorded is not only tracked, but it is also edited. And here are a couple of things I have noticed about doing this project. First, let me give you some background. I think this is the 4th audiobook that I have voiced, definitely the longest. When it's done, probably, 12 or 14 hours. So I'm not new to this, but I'm also not as experienced as a lot of narrators. And that's because I only voice my own books. I don't do it for other people. With that said, somebody approached me about doing a trilogy of books, and, maybe I'm thinking about doing that. It sounds like a fun project, and once I'm done with this, maybe. I feel like I'm getting better, and that's the great thing about taking a big project like this. I think I've told the story about the very first voiceover that I did, and it was bad, man. It was some stuff that I had written out or thought I had written out. It wasn't polished, and I feel like I ended up with maybe 20 minutes of tape, if you can believe that. We narrowed it down, and I was like, what the hell? Like, I was really excited about going into the studio and doing it, and it was such a mess. I want to say that was probably, 15 years ago. It's hard to believe, but when I think back to things like that, even the first podcast that I've done, or the first radio episodes I've done, first conference calls, the first speeches, anything to do with my speaking ability, it's neat to look back on that and say, wow, you really have improved, because I don't know that I'm going to notice a lot from the very first chapter of this read that I did compared to the last chapter, but I do feel I'm getting better, and you can definitely notice years and years ago and how much I've improved since that time. One of the things that makes this one different is, I mentioned going into studios. That's what I've done in the past. This one is the first audiobook that I am engineering myself. And I think that's good and bad. It gives me a lot of time. So when my voice gets tired or I get physically tired, I can take a break. And that's what I'm doing. That's why it's taken 6-7 weeks in to this. I'm going to give it a couple months before I'm done. I'm a lot more aware of what I'm doing. That's the other element of this. And I think that's sort of good, but there's some downsides to it. I'll dive into that here in a minute. It needs to be right, especially so since this book is about podcasting. I feel that a lot of great voiceover people are going to be listening to this. It's going to be judged by the quality of audio. It's going to be judged by pronunciation. A lot more than just the content of the book itself. Probably a lot more than maybe an average consumer who listens to audiobooks in the car or in headphones would listen to. So I'm trying to step up my game here. I saw a documentary movie called Indie Game that was really interesting about independent game developers. And there was a game on there called Fez, like the funny hats the Shriners wear. And this guy took so long on developing this game that the levels at the end had a different skill level of graphic design than the first levels. And he went back and did the first levels all over again. He wanted it to match the quality at the end. And I have thought about that. I've thought about these first few chapters because, again, I'm being judged by other podcasters, and that's where you're going to start. Usually, you start at the very beginning. I think, man, do I really need to do that again? And the answer is maybe. I don't know. I'm going to go back and listen to it after I have a fresh set of ears, can get away from it for a couple weeks and say, well, it's good, it's not good. Sometimes you can get too close to it. That's another thing that I'm noticing. You really can overanalyze what you're doing. And I think that's another reason that this thing has taken me too long. Sometimes I'll go through a segment, paragraph, and want to do it again and do it again and do it again. Anyway, that's one of the big lessons there. I don't know. I want it to be good. I'm attached to it. But there becomes a time when you just have to say, yeah, this is good enough. And I don't mean that in trying to shortcut things, but realizing that at the end of the day, you're tired and your ears are also tired. So your ears can fool you. And I'm listening back on a little bitty computer speaker, actually only one side of it because I'm recording on the right channel. So I don't even hear myself accurately sometimes. That can be good, I think, because if I can understand it on a small speaker, that's the speaker that I'm monitoring on, it's probably going to sound better with headphones or better on a full performance speaker. I don't know, just random thoughts. So consider that if you're looking into doing audio book work. I'm hearing problems that I would not have noticed previously, just like you would with your podcast, that first episode. You think, oh, this is great. 10th episode, 100th episode. I think, man, I cannot believe that I would have released that. And that's not only with this book. I found some problems with my speech in the way that I'm slurring words or saying "tuh" instead of "to." The general, pronunciation of things and general diction, like the separation of words, not slurring words together, that's one of the things that I'm noticing. One of the big ones is pacing. I already speak pretty fast, but I'm having to slow things down, really focus on keeping things even for the delivery of the book. I've talked about this before. Think about it with a musician. You can have an easy part, and if you're just learning how to play guitar, sometimes you can play that part really fast because you're comfortable with that, or you spend more time on it because it's easy. And you have that hard part, and everything slows down. And I can get that way when I'm reading something, especially if I'm reading a name or something that is difficult to pronounce, Spanish surname like rolling R's or something like that. And you're trying to do it right and not sound like a gringo. But a lot to think about. Pacing, it'll slow you up if you run into words that you don't know. It seems slow when I do it, but when I play it back, it sounds fine. This is one of the things that I think is important for us to realize. I talked about listening, I guess like on the monitor speakers, we want to have an accurate representation of what we have, and speed is an important part of that because I think we can lose track of what slow is and what fast is. This is one of the reasons that when you edit your podcast, I suggest that you edit at 1x speed. Do not edit 1.5, 2, 3. I think people try to save time doing that. But what happens is you get used to hearing things faster than they actually are. And because you are getting better as a host, you start blitzing through this thing. And the people who are listening to it on even 1x speed, they think, man, you're going way too fast because you're used to hearing it fast. That's normal for you. They're used to hearing you or hearing other people speak at normal speed. Again, slurring words, especially and. Sometimes I will not put that D on there. I'll say and I will combine words together. I remember a radio engineer telling me this maybe 15 years ago. He said it was difficult to edit some of the things. Okay, see what I just did? I said difficult to edit some of the things that I was doing because the words were combined and he didn't have a place to snap in there, put in the edit, and make it a good fix. So what I started doing because of that was starting over at the beginning of the sentence. If you are making mistakes, start over. I don't do it at the beginning of the sentence now. I do it at the beginning of the paragraph because I want that pacing. I want that breath. That's one of the things that I found to be very important in this audiobook and also in radio and podcasting. Start where you can get that phrasing in exactly how it needs to be. Don't come in the middle of something because, again, to take it back to that pacing thing, your pacing comes off. Sometimes you're too loud. That's one of the things. Sometimes you're too soft. Sometimes it just doesn't matter. It's like two sentences mashed together and people can hear that edit. You can tell this by looking at the waveform. If you're using something like Audacity or Audition, you know what I'm talking about. You have a visual representation of your speech. And you can tell when words are separated or words run together. together. You see what I'm doing? I'm getting very analytical here. And these are things that you might not have noticed, and I might not have noticed them previously, but that's the great thing about doing something like an audiobook, doing something like editing your own podcast. You start to realize that there are mistakes you are making you were not aware of. Now you're aware of them. Once you're aware, I think you need to fix them. You don't want things to sound weird when it comes to pacing, when it comes to diction, enunciation, but things don't sound weird. That's the thing. They sound weird to you because they're uncomfortable to you. But when you go back in the playback, you say, oh, that sounds pretty good. I'm sounding like a pro guy. I think this would be a good experience for any podcaster. And this is especially if you're doing music-based radio or interview format podcasts, something where if you scoped an air check, and by that I mean just taking out all the rest of the stuff that you're doing, the music, other people talking, and you just listened to you. So let's say you're playing music on a top 40 station. Maybe your station actually plays music, and you listen to you for that hour, from hour 2 to 3. 2 to 3. See what I'm doing there? You listen to yourself for that hour. If you scoped it and took just your stuff, just the time you're actually speaking, you might be speaking for 5 minutes. But compare that to a 12-hour audiobook, 14-hour audiobook. Compare that to your episodes. That's really short. You've got music-based radio, then episodes, then something like this audiobook. When you have to sit with something, see, I did it again. When you have to sit with something for a very long time, and as I mentioned, I'm 6 or 7 weeks in on this, it changes your perspective, and you get very clear on what you are doing. Overall, a great experience and surprisingly enjoyable, even though it's been a lot of work. Talked about having the opportunity to do a book for somebody else, the trilogy. Maybe, I don't want to say yes, but I think it would be kind of fun. It's actually I'm not going to say what it is, but it's something, I feel like it's an opportunity to do something different. It's almost like when you see a Disney star, somebody like Britney Spears, and then she goes and does like an R-rated movie. You're like, oh my God, how could little Britney do an R-rated movie? This is one of those kind of things. Not that I've got a squeaky clean image, but it's a little bit different than what I've been doing. It allows me to, or would allow me, if I do it, it will allow me to stretch what I'm doing. And I'm looking forward to that if I do it. But I got to get this one done first. If you're curious about opportunities like this, I think it's going to make you a better host. So take a look. A great way to see what is available as far as audiobook opportunities. It's Audible's Audio Creation Exchange, and that is known professionally. They call it ACX. And if you go to acx.com, take a look. Take a look at what people are looking for as far as audiobook narrators, the kind of narrations they want, the kind of content they have for you to read. Maybe audition. That'll give you a learning experience. You don't have to say yes, even if they say yes, but you'll get feedback on what they think, what they like, what they don't like about your voice. And it will give you a new perspective to your hosting should you decide to do it. If you want to keep updated on this book, of course, I'll update you here on Build a Big Podcast. And you can subscribe by going to bigpodcast.com/subscribe. But the mailing list that I send out a weekly newsletter, maybe every couple weeks. I don't know. 3 or 4 times a month. It's low volume. It's super quick. It's going to keep you updated with the podcasting, broadcasting space, marketing yourself via audio. It's going to give you little tips like the ones that I talked about on this episode. bigpodcast.com/subscribe. That has everything for you. Thank you for listening. I'll see you on the next episode of Build a Big Podcast.